Welcome to Flipping Tables, where we bring all of our religious thinking to Jesus, who flips the table for his upside-down kingdom. I'm Julie Sexton, and I'll be your host. Hey friends, welcome to episode 39. I'm Julie Sexton, the host of this podcast, and each week I'm joined by one or more co-hosts. This week, I'm joined by Twyla Brown. We're so honored that you have chosen to spend time with us. We're going to continue to discuss Mark's account of the final events of the last night of Jesus' life on his way to the cross. These events are the most important in all of human history, and what we believe about Jesus is certainly the most important issue in our lives. And I know that every day there are so many pressing issues that are vying for our attention. But friends, please listen. Who you believe Jesus was and is the most important thing any of us have in our lives. We're either building our lives on Him or on the world. Only one of those two things has a foundation that will endure for all of eternity. We want to build our lives on the right foundation. So Twyla, welcome to the table.
So happy to be with you again. Look at us.
We're on a streak.
We are. I'm telling you though, we have had full weeks, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's like Thursday for us, but
Yeah.
I feel like I've already had a weekend in the middle of my week.
And I still have more things to do. We've got our girl, Kimberly. She's at Disney. I mean, if that's not like, that's like running a marathon or like a full-time job. Like, I don't even want to go there because
It's a good thing she runs marathons and is in training because she was ready for this.
She's had a full
Wow.
week, I'm sure. I've had all kinds of activities with work and with my kids. And I started the week with my little girls group that I disciple. And this weekend, we've got some fun plans. I haven't even told you this yet.
No. Tell me.
So Saturday, we're going to surprise kids. We're going to go over to Louisville and we're going to do the Mega Cavern Tour because my
that's
husband
fun.
can ride through
Yes.
it, right? Like he doesn't have to walk. It's a little ride. So we're going to do that. We're going to stay in a hotel and he's going to stay at the hotel and watch the UK game. And I'm going to take the kids to that Jack-o'-lantern festival. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't.
Have you seen it online?
You know, Halloween's not my favorite thing, but I know that you love it, and so have the best time.
No,
What's it about?
They turn this park. There's a path through it and you have timed entries, right? So we're going at 7:30 and crazy. You got to Google this. Crazy path full of jack-o'-lanterns of all sizes, all lit up. It's beautiful and amazing. It's beautiful. So pretty. So I can't wait. My kids their little minds are going to be just blown. And so we'll spend the night and then come back on Sunday.
Did you say, do they know that they're doing this?
They don't.
This is all a surprise?
Surprise.
Oh, it's going to be a confetti weekend.
It's going to be fun.
So much fun.
But full week, right? Like, hey, why stop and rest on the weekend after a long week? Let's jam pack it.
Yeah.
So,
let's maximize the last couple of days of fall break and let's just go hard. That's what you're doing.
Know what I always say, get to heaven out of breath because I lived my life to its fullest and did all the things and served all the people and took every opportunity. And this is going to be a weekend full of opportunity to be with my people. So,
yeah. Well, that sounds great.
Right.
I hope you survive. I'm looking forward to pictures and videos and all the fun things.
All the things. And tell me, you had a wedding in the middle of the week.
We did. It was kind of an interesting Tuesday, but you know what? It was so beautiful and so perfect. My daughter Lydia, this is her best friend. This is our bonus daughter. And they've done all these milestones together. And
I saw your cute little picture of them prom dresses and then at the wedding. Like that was precious.
yes, because that year when they went to prom in 2019, I thought like Anna had this beautiful white dress and I thought they looked like little princess brides.
They did.
And then to see them like standing beside each other in Anna in her wedding dress and Lydia in this beautiful formal. And I was just like, they're babies.
It was beautiful.
And it was so fun to see. But Lydia was so like, it was hitting her so hard. She has so much feelings and emotion. Like she was literally shaking when they were taking their vows because she was so happy. And yes, it was so precious and beautiful. But it was, weddings aren't usually on a Tuesday, but I should say they wanted to get married on their 5-year dating anniversary. They've
There was a reason it was a
They've been
Tuesday.
dating through the end of high school and through their college years, and now they're, married. And I think today they're leaving on their honeymoon, and I hope they have a fantastic honeymoon. And it was so emotional for me, though, to pray about her on her wedding day. And I was just like, wow, this is something. But it has made the week extra full.
Yeah. You know what? That makes me think, because we're going to be talking today about people who have been traveling, right?
Yes.
They've had a full week. And you talk about Anna going on her honeymoon and how it is when you travel. Like, you're sleeping in different places, your schedule's different, you're interacting with lots of people. I think about like how exhausting that can be to travel. And just all of those experiences that you have along the way, and how it just, everything kind of is just off its regular like schedule, right? Like you're kind of like, I don't know, you're just not in your regular zone. And I think about Kimberly. I mean, we just said she's on her Disney, but this week is not going.
It's not going exactly the way they
planned. Her little guy is sick. And so you think about, not only are you exhausted because you're traveling and you're just, out of sorts a little bit because you're not in your regular place with your regular things. And then you throw into that the unplanned sickness of a kid. Mm-hmm. And, even though Jesus had been preparing his disciples for this trip to Jerusalem, this trip is not going as they planned either. And it's not what they thought this week was going to be. And so we set it up like that for you to lead us through, Julie. But just for our listeners to think about, this week is not what his boys, right? I call them his boys. We've got the brothers of
basically
Thunder
children,
and, right? They thought this week was something different, and they're going to be really shook. But also you think about the dimension of this, of just, how you feel when you travel and just being tired, celebrating and traveling and lots of social interaction and them being tired. So go ahead and walk us through what this week probably looked like for them.
Well, I'm going to actually not walk through the whole week, but I do appreciate how you kind of set me up there, because they arrived to Jerusalem on Sunday, what we know as Palm Sunday, and then they're coming into Jerusalem, going back out to Bethany. They're just traveling back and forth. And here, like middle of the week, and we've talked about it in these previous episodes, this Passover meal. And we have spent a lot of episodes just talking about this last day, this last night, because again, some of the most important things in history happen on this night. This is the salvation plan coming together. There have been a lot of preparations, a lot of arrangements that have been made. They had to plan, where they were going to eat the Passover. Jerusalem's not their home. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we might forget that. These are Galilee boys.
Right.
They've had to travel to get there. They're not walking in and they don't have like everything set up for them. So, and again, we talked about it in a previous episode. This is a meal that would have started around sunset and it could last up until midnight. So they probably have come to this meal tired and hungry. And we've talked about all these different ceremonial cups of wine that are a part of this meal. And I'm bringing this up because I want us to kind of feel that some of what they could have potentially been feeling. Imagine that you've traveled, you've been super busy, and now you're at a very long meal that has all of these special readings and hymns. And there's a lot of things that you're remembering because you've done this your whole life. But again, Jesus is changing things. There is a blend of old and new. And then at the end of this meal, probably closing in on midnight, they leave this meal to walk through these dark, quiet streets. I want you to feel this, guys. It's spring. It's early spring, so the air is cool. There's a full moon. There's always a full moon at Passover. And while they are walking out of Jerusalem towards the Mount of Olives, Jesus is talking and talking. He's giving them all of these instructions about the coming of the Holy Spirit. And why do I know this? Because Mark doesn't tell us this. I'm getting it somewhere, right? I'm getting it from John. John 13 through 17, we call that the upper room discourse. And in those chapters, he is teaching them about the Holy Spirit's going to be coming. He's telling them things like, I'm going to be going away. And they're like, Lord, we don't know where you're going. We don't know what you're talking about. And they're troubled. And he says, don't let your hearts be troubled and don't be upset. And all of this is going on. And again, they're fatigued. They're tired. The food and the weight of the wine and just all of these weighted down with emotions. And they're walking, and a lot of people speculate, because Jesus always taught with things that he was looking at. When he's given the John 15 discourse about his father is the gardener and he is the true vine, and they're probably standing by a vineyard, and he's teaching them this. They're out standing in the night air, and he's talking about the vine and the branches, and again, the effect of the bread and the wine, and how carbs make you feel, friends. And so all of this is kind of like going on in them. It's taking a toll on them. And sometime in this night, he has told them one of them was going to betray him. And so this adds like confusion, and it's another layer of grief. And then Twyla, I want you to come in and read from John, I think we're still in 14, start at verse 27.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he says, "You will all fall away," Jesus told them, "for it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter declared, "Even if all fall away, I will not." "Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all of the others said the same.
I mean, friends, look what he has just told them. He's already told them that one of them was going to betray him. And then Jesus calls out Peter, their leader, and says, "Peter, you're going to deny me tonight. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you're going to deny me." And Peter is like, "I will never deny you." He is emphatic that he will not deny Jesus. And Jesus says, "No, actually you will. Oh, and by the way, the rest of them are going to do it too. You're not doing this alone. You're all going to scatter." He's dropping all these prophecies on them throughout this evening. And it is so much. And this is what's happening as they enter the olive grove at Gethsemane. This, again, I will hope this is shedding some light on the condition that they're in. These guys are in no condition to support Jesus in the agony that he is going to experience over the cup of wrath that he is about to take. He is about to drink the cup of God's wrath that has been stored up for all of our sin that we have brought into this world. So, Twyla, can you actually, I'd like for you to read, I put it there in your notes. You got it. 32.
Yep. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and he prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "anything is possible for you. Take this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but you will." Then he returned to his disciples and he found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more he went away and he prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning the 3rd time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer."
I mean, you can just hear the disappointment. while Jesus has been agonizing in prayer, his disciples, Peter, James, and John, they are wrapped up in their outer garments, and they're just sleeping under this full moon. They're so asleep, they don't even hear the heavy footsteps approaching, coming out of Jerusalem, out the East Gate, and walking across the Kidron Valley and up into this olive garden. Gethsemane is literally named for an olive press. And Jesus has literally been experiencing the agony that it would be like to be pressed. Mm-hmm. And just, he's given everything that he has left. Yeah. He has talked nonstop to them. Mm-hmm. He knows what is on the line tonight, and he has poured everything he has into these disciples. And then he's come to this garden, and he has agonized under the weight of the cup that he is about to drink. And the disciples, they're not there for him. They are not physically able to come alongside him and lift up his arms. They are not there. And so, friends, what goes on now is the arrest and the trials of Jesus. They are going to take place over the wee hours. They probably got into Gethsemane around midnight-ish. And so everything that is going on is being done by the religious leaders under the cover of night. They needed all of Jesus's loyal supporters asleep so that they could avoid an uprising. Mm-hmm. They don't want to create this stir. They have to do this on the down low, very hush-hush. And you have to picture that Jerusalem, inside those city gates, was quiet. Because all these travelers, they don't even fit inside of Jerusalem. They are outside of the city for the most part. Mm-hmm. The people that have followed his ministry, Jerusalem, again, that's not his home. Mm-hmm. The people there are going to be less familiar. They're curious about it, but they're not the people who have been healed by him and are hanging on all of his words and stuff. So the inside Jerusalem crowd led, even the average person is asleep. Who's up in the middle of the night is the Roman soldiers and the religious leaders, the corrupt priests that are looking to get rid of their enemy before everybody else is awake. Yeah. And so I want you to think about the haste of the arrest, the trials, and getting him to the cross. The haste that this is done in is very reminiscent of the haste that the Israelites felt leaving Egypt on the first Passover. Yeah. So there's just like an element of that. And there's so much here that we can't possibly unpack all of this for you. I just want to kind of get you in the mood and to read it and to take it all in against maybe a little bit of a backdrop, a slightly different backdrop, I should say. So Peter's denial is going to take place, as Jesus predicted, as the rooster crows. And what time would a rooster crow? Probably about 4 or 5 in the morning. And Jesus's final sentence would have been handed down around sunrise. So what group of people is around at the crack of dawn on a major Jewish holiday to shout, "Crucify"? It's going to be mostly the corrupt priest and the Roman soldiers. Those are the ones who have been up through the night working on this. Because the scripture tells us that Jesus was crucified at 9 in the morning. Do you know what else happened at 9 in the morning? That is the time of the first temple prayer service that's happening. So people who would be the travelers who have been outside of Jerusalem, they're going to be coming in to Jerusalem to go to the temple for that as Jesus is carrying his cross out of town. Mm-hmm. His supporters, do you picture this, friends? His supporters are coming into the city as Jesus is going out. Luke would tell us, if we were reading from Luke's gospel, a little sprinkling of Luke for you, but there are women that are weeping over Jesus, and Jesus is carrying the cross, and he's saying, women of Jerusalem, don't weep over me. Weep for yourselves. And so, like, this is all happening fast. Think of, like, all of the people who traveled with Jesus, the women who travel with Jesus, the people, they don't know any of this has happened. Mm-hmm. They're getting into Jerusalem, and this is all unfolding. And so Jesus is crucified outside of the city walls. Rome liked to crucify by the road. And because there's a sign over Jesus's head saying King of the Jews, and it's in 3 languages, and that was done by Pilate so that the people walking by, because if you don't know, Rome likes to crucify by the road where people can see what's going on, because this is supposed to remind you, this is what happens if you come against Rome. You're going to end up on a cross. We've mentioned that in a previous episode. And I also want you to think about the condition that Jesus is in physically. All of these beatings, he's been flogged. The scripture tells us that the Messiah was going to be almost beyond human recognition. He barely would have the appearance of a man. This is the condition that Jesus is in. So even the people who were anticipating that now everybody's awake and he's on the cross and they're coming in and they're like, wait a second, this is the guy that we were, throwing our capes down on Palm Sunday, that he's riding in. We're thinking this is going to go much, much differently. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we were wrong. So then this crowd starts to shift. Mm-hmm. But they weren't the ones there yelling, crucify. They're the ones who are walking by him, hurling insults now. And they're like, you obviously were not who you said you were.
Right. They're thinking like, wait a second, imposter. We thought you were the thing. And obviously, based on what's just happened to you, you couldn't possibly be the Messiah. Luckily, he shows us different a couple days later, but
he does. Yeah. But why don't you read out of Mark 15? Can you read like 33 through 41? Yep. Just that final.
Yeah. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing near heard this, they said, listen, he's calling Elijah. Someone ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down, he said. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom, and when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. Some women were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph and Salome. In Galilee, these women had followed him and cared for his needs. Many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem were also there.
Thanks, Twyla. So a couple of things I just want to point out. Again, those times, 9:00, Jesus is going to the cross. At noon, darkness falls over Jerusalem. And at 3 is when he gives up his spirit. And do you know what else happens at 3 in the afternoon? That's when all the Passover lambs were being slaughtered. So Jesus, the true Passover lamb, is surrendering to death as our Passover lamb, just as the priest who wanted Jesus crucified are sacrificing the Passover lambs for the families to celebrate the Passover that night, because they're going to take it after sundown. And, one of the things that really stood out to me, thinking about these people who are mocking him, and when it says, listen, he's calling Elijah, that really stands out to me this time, because at the end of the Passover, a child would usually open the front door to see if Elijah is there, because there was a built-in part of the Passover remembrance ceremony that they partake of. They even had a place set for Elijah, because they're showing, like, they're building the story. It's a narrative. And there were prophecies that there was going to be an Elijah-like figure who would come as a forerunner to the Messiah. And we know that is John the Baptist. But these people who are mocking him, dying on the cross, mocking Jesus, are going, okay, you weren't who we thought you were. Oh, look, you're calling for Elijah now because you need the Messiah. I mean, do you guys see the irony of this? This is like heavy. Mm-hmm. And again, Charlie, when you were reading the end of that, it was just talking about those women who were outside of the city, those women who weren't at the Last Supper with the disciples. And now they're coming in. They're like, what happened?
Right.
What happened while we were asleep last night? How is this? What is going on? Listen, friends, those women, they had the most to lose because these women had been elevated. Like, they were followers of Jesus. They were taking care of him. Jesus talked to them like he talked to his disciples. He let them learn from him and follow him. And they saw their entire future being crushed and crucified before them. The Middle East is an honor-shame culture. They were way down in shame. I don't have time to get into this, but you can study this. They were weighted down. They didn't have a voice. Jesus had given them a voice. He had taken them from shame and had lifted them up to an honor. He treated them as something they had never been treated before. He let them be his disciples. And they're standing there and they're looking over at Jesus and they are devastated. They can't like not look at it. They can't they can't stop looking at him. I'm sure they don't want to see it, but they have to see it because they're in utter shock that this is happening. It's just extremely sad to think about the women. But we have to talk about this centurion, this Roman centurion, this Gentile man, an outsider. When Twyla read it in verse 39, and when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. For an outsider to stand there and to take it in, he would not have been among those excited to see Jesus come on Palm Sunday into Jerusalem. He was like, this is going to be a problem all week, I can tell.
Right.
But now he's standing there and he's looking and he makes a conclusion.
Yeah.
He reaches a much different conclusion than those who had previously cheered for Jesus. Mm-hmm. It's really sobering to take all of this in and to think about it. So, kind of as we're wrapping up today in this conversation about the most important event in human history, Twyla, as we've studied it and been immersed in it for weeks now, what do you think is some of the most eye-opening parts that are just changing the way you see it, and shaping you?
I think that seeing these, and I've said this before, seeing some of these different symbolic pieces and rituals and really understanding them and how they continue to point to the Messiah and continue to point to that one day we're going to drink of that cup of praise together. Like the anticipation that it gives me. Yeah. Before I would just read that, I'm like, oh, okay, hopeful. Whatever. That's great. And one day. But now to know, like, no, like literally he's like, hang up. I'm not going to have the wine again until we all are celebrating together. And just that anticipation, the beauty of those pieces of the story and how it further deepens just my understanding and my excitement and my appreciation. And I think some of these pieces that we've talked about today, like thinking about, who was the crowd? Like everybody, they'd had a big meal. I mean, my husband's always like, we have one, if I have one glass of wine at dinner, he's like, oh, well, I know you're going to be asleep at, 9 p.m. Like, so you're thinking about these people, they were all asleep. They'd had long days. They'd had long meals. Like you said, they got the carbs, they got wine, like they're sleeping. And so the people that are yelling crucify, like that piece of it was really eye-opening. He's like, yeah, no, these are the people who have like spent their day and night plotting and figuring out how to kill Jesus. So I think those were the things that kind of have just broadened my understanding and my like view of just this whole event.
Yeah, I think those things have really, because when you have done what we've done and just really immersed ourselves in it, and we've gone back and we've thought about the Passover and we've thought about all these elements and just thinking about them traveling. And I am not my best on a travel day.
No.
And it takes a minute. And then you put like this weight of what was unfolding. Mm-hmm. And there's so much new, even for the disciples, just they were learning so much new information. And I can't take in a lot of information when I am tired.
Right.
And they're taking in so much information because Jesus is preparing them for the next phase. And that didn't look anything like they thought it was going to look like. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been very heavy, but so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Man, because we know it doesn't end here.
Yeah.
Everybody's sad and everybody's broken. But this is not the end of the story.
No.
The best part of the story is coming. And that's what we're going to talk about in our next episode. I cannot wait to talk about the resurrection.
Yeah. All right. You ready for we wrap up? This was an amazing episode. The last several have been like my favorites. Ready to wrap up with a bright spot? I have mine ready if you'd like me to go first.
I do.
We always are like deer in the headlights whenever one of us says bright spot. Because I'm like, wait, I had all these good things and now I don't remember.
I know.
So my bright spot is that this week, one of my friends who listens to the show, and I knew she had listened to some, but I wasn't sure like if she was still listening, or she texted me and she commented on, she was glad to hear that I was back on the show because she's like, I always love it when you're on the show.
Well, she knows you. You're a personal connection to this.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, she is still listening and she is up to date. And, so I love that. I love when we get good feedback and that people love it. And I know she's somebody that is on a journey of processing where she is with Jesus and who is Jesus to her. And so I'm so glad that she's here, and I'm glad that she's doing hard work and digging in to figure out who he is, because I love her.
I know.
And I want her to know who Jesus is and what he did for her and that he loves her.
Oh, man.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get all emotional.
It is emotional because this is, we've unpacked the cross tonight.
Yeah.
And this is the most important thing. And we want everybody that we love to build their life on Jesus. And my bright spot happened at Sweet Anna's wedding. It was it's a beautiful thing to see the first one of your kids' friends get married. So that was beautiful. A young woman who we love like one of our daughters. And that was so special. It was just beautiful to see that. She married a fine young man. He is he's a new follower of Jesus. And a couple of years new, still new, but that's beautiful. But I got to meet someone at his wedding who said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a podcaster. And she pulls out her phone and she subscribed to my podcast right there.
Yay.
We picked up a new listener at that wedding.
If you're listening, welcome.
Welcome to our table. But that was so fun.
Yeah.
That was so fun to see that.
Yeah.
And it encourages us. We're encouraged to get feedback that people are listening or that people want to listen. Mm-hmm. So friends, if you are enjoying our podcast, will you please share it with your friends? Will you please help us to grow this audience? If this content adds to your life, then invite someone else to come to this table with you. And until next time, when we talk about the resurrection, and it's going to be good because it ends with a lady, and we like that because we're girls at this table predominantly. So friends, keep following the table flipper and leave the table flipping to Jesus.